Here we go. Good evening. My name is Danielle Navas. I am a realtor here with Texas United Realty, and I am also a mentor here with Texas United Realty. And let's go ahead and get started. Now, I may have a few pausing moments only because the new system with Zoom requires that you admit every single person that's in the kind of waiting room that they have here and stuff. But let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the subject is what to go over with your buyer client at closing. So often you don't get this information. You kind of just go to closing and you're looking real nice and you're sitting there and maybe making some small talk and things like that with your client. So let's talk about some of the things that we need to go over when we're sitting there with our buyer client specifically. Mind you, there's not so much of this conversation that happens with your seller client so much as it does with your buyer client, okay? And some of these things you'll go over with when they kind of present themselves. So if you get a good title person that actually explains and goes through most of the documents and explains what they're signing, then this will be very helpful as you go throughout, because some of those things that they mention will trigger some of these things and remind you to mention these things to your client, okay? And there's a few that come off the top of my head as well too, as I'm going through this as well. So I made just kind of this little layout for you that you're welcome to take a snapshot of or what have you, so that way you have it when you're sitting at the closing table with your client. So one of the things that you're going to want to go over with them is to tell your client that they will need to file their homestead exemption in January of the next year. Those documents can be found on their local county appraisal district website. This will reduce their taxes by about 20%. And in turn, that reduction of taxes will also reduce their monthly payment, which is fantastic. So they get to look forward to a lower monthly payment in the future. Now, so if a person happened, let's use this time frame for example. So let's say if somebody purchases their house today, for example, they cannot file their homestead exemption until January 1st, okay? If they purchase their house earlier this year, let's say they purchased it in February of this year of 2020, they will not be able to file their homestead exemption until they get to January 1st or past January 1st of 2021, okay? So it's actually quite simple. Your client, when they hear about it, especially if you had a client that felt flustered throughout the process of purchasing, they will likely feel the same way towards their homestead exemption. And they will be like, what is this? I don't know what this is. Please don't leave me. Can I call you? All that good stuff. So here's how it'll look for you, so that way you can help your client with this. So this is the HCAD website when you get there, okay? And it goes to forms, and then you can click popular forms, okay? And then you'll click right here where it says homestead exemption, general residential, over 65, disability, over 55, a surviving spouse, okay? And so it's pretty basic. It's really just demographic information more than anything, okay? And how they're selecting their homestead exemption. And really just demographic information more than anything, okay? And then of course they're also going to need to provide their ID with their updated address. So I know some people will sit there forever and take forever to switch over their ID, but they really do need to get it done sooner than later. And so you can actually mail this in once you're done, and you include a copy of their ID. You will need both copies of ID if it is a husband and wife, so make sure that they get that taken care of and get that turned in. It does take a little while for them to see the exemption, because they have to, it gets in contact with their lender and all that good stuff as well too. But once they have filed it, they don't need to file it again, okay? So a reduction in taxes would be pretty awesome, okay? So encourage them to do that. Let them know. I like to use it as a moment to reach out with my client again later on the following year. Let them know, hey, I'm still here. I'm still supporting you. And it reminds them, oh, hey, this was a great realtor. Let me send them some more business as well too. So this is a wonderful opportunity for you to stay in contact with your client. So make sure that you remind them of their homestead exemption, and for them to find out that their taxes are going to be reduced, they get really excited. Um, this 20% can adjust just based on the client's situation, especially if they're over 65 or if they have a disability. Now, the person that is over 65 or has the disability would need to be the person that is on title. Okay, so just make sure that that's the case. It can't be like, oh, well, I have a child that lives in the household. Can't I get a homestead exemption? Okay, and specifically for that person. All right. The other thing, your client will get junk mail from many entities offering to do their homestead exemption paperwork. Have them throw it away, as this is something that they can do for free. So one of my clients actually sent this to me as well too. So I wanted to show this to you so you kind of know what these look like. It looks very official. You know, it even says it's homestead designation services. You're like, well, that sounds official. They've got a return by date. You know, they're asking for demographic information. They're asking me to sign. And right here, you can see that they're asking you to enclose $49 so that they can file this for you. You do not need to pay that. You do not need to do that. It's honestly free. There's no reason to pay that whatsoever. Okay. Sometimes the prices fluctuate and sometimes it's 35 bucks. Sometimes it's a little bit cheaper. Let me zoom in. Whoops, I zoomed in a lot. All right, so just so you guys can kind of see a little better what they're asking for and stuff. Okay, so they're going to get junk mail like this. They're even going to get some junk mail that says that, oh, we can record your deed with the city, or I'm sorry, with the county and stuff. So please fill this out, turn it in, and send in some money. They do not need to do that either. That's something the title company is already taking care of, likely, unless it was some, you know, sometimes a form of cash transaction or something. And then I would just confirm that with the title company to see if any extra steps need to be taken. But otherwise, just tell your client to throw these things away. They do not need this, okay? All right. So the other thing is notify your client that their loan will likely get sold, possibly before they even make their first payment. Nothing about their loan changes, only the company that they make their payments to, okay? So likely it happens with, especially if it's not new construction, because they don't broker their own mortgages like they do. So likely they're going to originate their mortgage with who they are, with who they're with right now. And then what happens is that mortgage company has already made some money off of the loan. They've already originated it, and they choose to go ahead and sell it to another lending entity so that way they can free up some money by selling that loan. And in addition, that company that purchased it is able to make some money off of the interest off of that loan. Okay, so they usually buy them in bulk. So they'll buy several files at one time from a particular company, and then they'll, you know, work on those. So nothing changes about their note whatsoever, because they're likely going to send you a picture and saying, what is this? What's going on? Why are they switching companies? Did something change? What's going on? So it's good to notify them prior to that this change will happen, so that way they can have a heads up. So, I mean, even in my experience, when I purchased my home in like the first year of that mortgage, my loan got sold like 4 times. So that is not out of the ordinary. That will happen. And just have them keep an eye on it, because you don't want them to send the check to the wrong place and then it takes a while for it to update to the new place. So you want to make sure that they stay in contact with those folks so that they're not late on their payments. Okay. So just give them a heads up. Another thing that may happen to your client as well too is that they there may be too much in their escrow account, and so likely they'll receive a check. It'll seem like a mystery check to them, and they will be like, oh my goodness, I got this cool check that's so freaking awesome, and then they go and cash it and do something fun with it, right? That is not what we want them to do. What they should do is return that check back to the escrow officer and tell them just leave it in escrow, because if not, what'll end up happening in the next year is that escrow will say, oh, well, now we're short in the account. You're going to need to put some more funds in here, so we're sure to be able to pay your homeowner's insurance and your taxes and things like that through your escrow account that's already been set up. So make sure that they keep track of that as well too. Okay. All right, the next thing, the buyer will need to use their closing disclosure to get their new mailbox keys and turn on the water. Encourage your client to change the locks to their house. All right. So the buyer, is going to be like, oh my gosh, how do I get my keys? How do I turn on water? Things like that. So the water company does require that closing disclosure in order for them to be able to turn on the water utilities there, simply because I guess it was an issue to where people were putting it under other names and they weren't living there, and it was causing issues in payment and whose responsibility it was and all that good stuff. So they now require that from the people that purchase it. So make sure that your client has that closing disclosure. I like to even put that for them on top, so that way they have it in their hand. They know exactly what they'll need to be able to move forward. So the closing disclosure is normally the very first thing that your title company will go over with at the closing table. I like for them to explain it to the client versus me explaining it to the client. They do it so well and it just rolls off their tongue and stuff. And also if there's additional questions, they're able to ask them as well too. So all right, so also the next one, unimproved taxes and new construction. So in your new construction transactions, typically what will happen is, oops, give me one second. Oh, can I share the word presentation? I can, yeah, you're welcome to email me as well too, for sure. Um, so unimproved taxes on new construction. So what'll happen with the new construction, they'll typically tell you, oh, our taxes are so low, they're so great. And typically it's on unimproved taxes, which means the tax rate on that was with just land, no house. And so later on, it gets evaluated by the appraisal district. And once they realize that there's a house there and an appraisal has recently been done, and they'll go ahead and the following year, they'll raise those taxes. So in my experience, what I've noticed is maybe we're going into a home and we're looking, for instance, at $190,000 home, for example. And when we walked it and we asked what the monthly payment would be in general, obviously, because they don't know our interest rate, they don't know taxes or insurance, they're giving us an estimation on what they've seen on other transactions. What'll end up happening is they'll tell you, for example, on that $190,000 house that it's, for instance, $1,600 a month, right? And then later on, once the new year begins and the taxes have been corrected and updated, then that same payment, excuse me. So initially when they close, I'm sorry, like for instance, if they were to close today on that new construction home, that payment would look something like $1,200 or so, and that client's super excited. But then when the first of the year begins and the all that stuff gets updated, then their payment will go to what they had originally been told, which is like that $1,600 payment. Okay, so they get that short period of time at times where it is a lower payment. This isn't always the case with new construction, but it is something to ask that consultant to make sure and see what this payment's going to look like later on. Okay. Also to ask them, is this payment going to be with an exemption, general homestead exemption, or is this without? So it gives your client something to look forward to as well too, in the event that their taxes do go up. At least they have the ability to reduce them a little bit as well too. Okay. Um, of course, during the closing time and all that good stuff, I do go over those things. And then, of course, we have moments of small talk and all that good stuff because we've gotten to know each other so well. And so we do some small chit chat and things like that. But these are definitely some important things that you should definitely talk about as you sit there with your client. Usually with the seller, you don't have so much of this conversation. Most of that is small talk, and then asking them about the keys and any receipts that they may have, of work that was completed, so that you make sure to leave that at the title company for that client. If there's any transferable warranties and things like that, go over those things with them as well too. Another thing that I would go over with my buyer client as well too is if they received a home warranty policy, definitely go over that, talk to them about that. I have had clients that they know that they have this home warranty policy and the AC goes out and then they go and spend the money warranty on it. And I'm like, guys, why didn't you call the home warranty company, guys? They cover so many of your appliances, your water heater, your refrigerator, your microwave, your stove, your washer, your dryer, that water heater, your AC, many plumbing issues, many of the electrical issues. Many times they'll change out fans for you. They'll change out your doorbell and things like that. So I would definitely tell them if you have even several items, like maybe you want your doorbell worked on, a seat, and you want some ceiling fans to be replaced and stuff like that, I would call them all at once so that your client would only pay a one-time $75 fee, and they'll come out and fix all of those things at one time. Now, if you called for a plumbing issue and an electrical issue, that will be two separate $75 fees. So I would say if it's a plumbing issue, get them all done at once. If it's an electrical thing, get them all done at once so that that way you only have to pay that fee one time. And keep in mind with that home warranty policy, they come out and they fix it. It's a licensed technician that comes out, and if they can't fix it, they replace it for free. No, just with that $175 fee that they charge. Okay. So, and make sure to remind them of that they have that available to them as well too. All right. Make sure you help them get their keys or coordinate with them for their keys as well too. Many times funding has not happened by the time you have finished closing with that client. So you may need to take the keys, hold on to them, wait until you funded, and then hand over those keys. So you should not hand over those keys until you have completely funded and you hear that from the title company. Otherwise, you are liable because they are in your possession. You are the professional, and it's your responsibility to make sure of that, okay? So just make sure that you don't hand over keys until you're for sure that you guys have funded, all right? The other thing, and probably very important, take a picture. If you don't take a picture, it didn't happen. You need this for your social media. You need this to post this up on your stuff so that people know that you're moving and grooving in the real estate world. A picture is vitally important. If your clients are camera shy, take a picture at a distance. Don't let any of the paperwork be shown of what they're signing and stuff. You don't want to hand out their information, their sensitive information, but you could take a general picture there. You can also, many people are very excited. They want to take a picture with the big key and all that good stuff at the title company. So let them do that. Make sure to take that picture for them and make sure that you ask them, is this okay for me to post on social media? Ideally, what would be great is for your client to post it up on their social media and ask them to tag you. And it's really great, so-and-so is my realtor, thank you so much. And they tagged you on there. So that's great advertisement for you. All their friends see it, all your friends see it, all that good stuff. So make sure you take that picture. It's very, very important, that people see that you're moving in real estate and all that good stuff. So make sure to take that picture, even with your sellers. Sometimes it's kind of weird with your seller because it's such an emotional process. They just let go of their house. They may not be as enthused to take that picture, but definitely check in, if nothing else, that you're at the title company and mention that it's closing day and all that good stuff. Maybe take a picture of the sign of the title company if your client's feeling camera shy. So, but make sure to ask for permission as well too for that as well. Okay, you don't want to put their picture up on social media and if they're not okay with it. So basically that's it, guys. Just the general things to go over with your client at the closing table. So just try and remember these things because it's very helpful to them. And they look forward to this kind of information because it's still very new to them. I wanted to mention one more thing as well too. Many clients want to know, how can I pay off my mortgage sooner than later? And I do like to give them advice that the trick that I was told by a mortgage lender is that if you pay an additional payment each year, you will cut your mortgage in half. So instead of 30 years, it would be 15 years. But you would have to make an additional payment. So let's say that somebody's monthly payment, for example, is $1,500. Now, not all of that $1,500 goes towards their principal. Part of it's going to their interest, their taxes, things like that. So it's really important that they know this. Okay. that they can pay an extra payment, so that they would keep making their $1,500 payment, and then they would make another $1,500 payment just to their principal once a year. And that'll help them to reduce their payments, the time frame of their payments. So they would be looking more at 15 years versus those 30 years. So besides, it doesn't help. I mean, it doesn't hurt. It's obviously going towards their principal that they're bringing down tremendously and all that good stuff. And it'll help build equity in their home as they continue to do so. So really great for them to take care of as well too, as they continue on through that process as well. So I do want to leave this open for just a few minutes and allow you guys to ask some questions. Feel free to unmute yourselves and ask some questions, or you're welcome to ask in the chat, and I'm happy to answer those for you as well. Anybody? Stand back.
Yeah, I have a comment.
Yes.
All right, then. I've never seen that they give me the keys at closing. It's normally the title company that keeps them, and they will not release them until the funding has been done. So I really I have never had the opportunity to have the keys on my hand and be able to decide when I'm going to give them to the new buyer.
Yeah, transactions are just different. I've had some, sellers that they leave them in the lockbox, and they're like, go ahead and take them out of the lockbox once, you're done with closing. I've had some that leave them at the title company. In most cases, the title person is like, that's okay. Go ahead and take them. Just make sure that they don't get them in their hands until I've mentioned that we funded. I've never had any that held the keys hostage per se. No. So it's just really on a transaction, on that particular transaction and how you guys coordinate that. I've even had it to where perhaps we go to the final walkthrough and the listing agent says, go ahead and take the keys from there and hold on to them, for closing for tomorrow. So it just really depends on how each person does it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right then. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And your name is what? I'm sorry.
Danielle Navas.
Danielle.
Yes, and you can find me also on our Texas United Realty Facebook group that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, guys,
are you also one of the mentors?
I am one of the mentors, yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, I have a question about the homestead exemption.
Yes.
The 20%. Is that just the first year, the 20%, and then it goes back to the full taxes the second year that they own the home, or is that
not at all? So
reduction?
that exemption continues on with them.
Okay.
It continues on with them. Now, of course, if taxes, as throughout time goes on, if taxes go up, so will their taxes will be going up as well too, which will in turn affect their payment as well too, and bring their payment up a little bit as well too as those adjust. But okay. No, the homestead exemption is for the life of the time that the person is living in that home. Okay. In addition, if you have, for instance, a 100% disabled person and that's elderly, they do not pay taxes. So like, for example, most people, when they inherit properties, they're kind of concerned about, okay, if I inherit this property from grandma, grandpa, or what have you, when they pass away, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to pay, the last 5-10 years worth of taxes since grandma and grandpa have been without paying taxes. And that's not the case. What ends up happening, for instance, if they inherit the property, let's say that grandma and grandpa were to pass away today and that person inherits the house, that client would own, that person that inherits the property would only be responsible for the taxes from the day in which that person is deceased to the end of the year, and of course going forward as well too. So it's not like they're paying the last 10 years worth of taxes, for example, that the family, that the grandma and grandpa weren't paying.
Okay.